I actually wrote this book in the beginning was for my own healing. And what I mean by that is I had been working with cancer patients, and I've been working and doing a bereavement group, and I had been doing a lot of work with my clients in my private practice, and I noticed a lot of grief and loss issues. However, it wasn't until my own family endured some devastating losses that I realized there wasn't a whole lot out there to help people beyond talk. There were support groups, there were bereavement support groups, but it just didn't get into the really heart of the matter. So, when my nephew died, it's been about 5.5 years ago, of cancer, bladder cancer, at the age of 21, and I walked that journey with my sister, and literally walked into the room right after he had died, and I witnessed my sister's spirit wanting to leave her body and go with him. I started doing some of the techniques on her to keep her present. And I'm the oldest, and I felt the therapist in me wanted to fix it, the big sister in me wanted to protect her, and I was also grieving the loss of my nephew. We were very close. So I did some of the energy work with her, and then we're going to flash forward a little bit. 6 months later, my brother committed suicide. Now, I had been working with him off and on, doing a variety of different techniques, and the therapist in me was trying to help him get the help he needed in the mental health community. But what I was aware of was, and I know this crowd will understand what I'm talking about, there was an attachment to his energetic field that I couldn't get rid of. I did some more studying and looked into that after he had committed suicide. So all the time that I'm going through this process, what I realized was as I reached out for help, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot out there to help me get rid of the physical energy of the loss and the grief that I was carrying around with me. Now, I'm going to talk about vibrations for a moment. Everything that's in existence is a vibration. The energy of grief and loss is a heavy, heavy vibration. Depending on the type of loss that you endure, the heavier and the slower the vibration is. So what I realized when I looked at from an energetic standpoint and the energy psychology work and the energy medicine work and all of the other dynamics that I had been using with my private practice clients was that was missing in the field of grief and loss. Now obviously the most devastating is the loss of a loved one. And by that I mean I want to clarify a loved one can be a pet. It can be an animal. I mean, I've lost some dogs and cats, and it was devastating to me. So kind of like what Ron had talked about earlier, there can be trauma endured in any kind of loss. Now, from a professional standpoint, I would often hear professionals refer to, and I hate this term, but I'm just going to state it, they would call it little T's and big T's. Little T's were the traumas that were not classified in this manual that mental health professionals use as criteria that need to be met to be a trauma. The big T's are anybody, if you think about going through a catastrophic illness or a war or anything like that, that qualified as the big T. When I started working with people, I realized, trauma is in the eye of the beholder. If you feel traumatized and somebody says, oh, well, that's a little T, how's that helpful? You're still holding it in your body. So trauma is in the eye of the beholder, and there's a whole chapter that I talk about in my book about that. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about why it's important for us to recognize how any kind of loss, now when I say any kind of loss, going back to working with my clients, people would come in and they retired, for example. I'll talk about a gentleman that I worked with. He had retired. He had been in, he had did crisis work. He was I don't know what they call him here, emergency medical person, and so he went out to, any kind of a crisis incident with the fire department. So when he retired, he, like all of us, we plan our financial piece of retirement, but we don't plan for how we're going to see ourselves after we retire, our identity. So he had lost his self-identity. He had lost something that he had done day in and day out that gave him a sense of meaning and purpose, and also, the rush and the passion of helping assist people and basically keeping a person alive or being with them when they died. He had lost all of that. So when we did some work around the loss that he endured as a result of retirement, he was able to move forward, acquire a different role, re-identify himself, find another passion, but he couldn't do that until we got rid of the block that I'm going to call the energetic block of loss. So we'll talk a little bit about that and just a little bit more about that in just a moment. What I did was I pulled together a dictionary definition of loss. And as you can see, dictionary definition talks a little bit about the harm or suffering caused by losing or being lost. This is the second definition is the one I'm going to talk about today. The power decrease in a circuit element or device caused by resistance.